San Francisco Federal Court, courtroom number 7. Bright white light illuminated the vast courtroom where rows of seats were packed with attorneys, reporters, and spectators eager to witness the high-profile lawsuit. A tense atmosphere hung in the air as Judge Beatrix Thornwald firmly struck her gavel and declared, "This court is now in session. Case number 2025 CV 7842, Magnatech Industries versus Musk Innovations for patent infringement." Judge Thornwald had presided over the bench for 30 years, witnessing lawsuits ranging from disgraced politicians to tech billionaires. But today, she couldn't hide a flicker of intrigue mixed with surprise. Standing before her, at the defendant's table, was a man the tech world knew all too well, Elon Musk. However, what sent murmurs rippling through the courtroom wasn't just his presence. It was something far more bizarre. Elon Musk had no lawyer. Amid the formidable legal team of Magnatech Industries, where expensive suits and thick briefcases formed a wall of power, Musk stood alone. No legal team, no aides, just a crumpled stack of papers in his hand. The judge raised an eyebrow. Slowly flipping through the case files before her, she glanced at the man standing at the defense table with mild amusement. "Mr. Musk," she said, her voice cool and authoritative, "my records indicate that you are representing yourself today. Is that correct?" Musk looked up, his expression calm, though his voice carried a slight hesitation. "Yes, Your Honor." A wave of whispers spread across the courtroom. Some reporters murmured into their recorders. A few spectators chuckled quietly. Even Magnatech's lead attorney, Dominic Reeves, allowed himself a faint, confident smirk. Judge Thornwald set her pen down, leaned back in her chair, and let the hint of a smile cross her lips. "A bold choice," she remarked, a note of dry amusement in her tone. "I hope you're prepared, Mr. Musk, because patent law isn't something you can improvise like a rocket launch." Laughter rippled through the courtroom, with some nodding in agreement. Elon Musk, one of the greatest minds in the world, actually thought he could defend himself in a case this complex? On the plaintiff's side, Magnatech CEO Victor Hammond could barely hide his satisfaction. Dressed in an expensive dark suit, Hammond leaned back in his chair, exuding smug confidence as he exchanged a few quiet words with his attorney Reeves. To him, this was more than just a lawsuit. It was the perfect opportunity to crush his rival. He had poured millions of dollars into this case. The best lawyers, the strongest evidence. A lawsuit that was all but won. Hammond nearly chuckled as he watched his rival stand there, shuffling through his crumpled papers in a disorganized manner. A tech mogul, yet too arrogant to hire a decent lawyer, he glanced at Reeves and gave a slight nod, an unspoken signal that their victory was all but certain. Meanwhile, Musk remained still, flipping through the pages in his hands before finally nodding at the judge. "Very well," Judge Thornwald said. "Let's begin. Plaintiff, you may present your case." Attorney Reeves stood adjusting his expensive gray tie. With a confident smile, he stepped forward, turning toward the judge. "Your Honor," Reeves began, his voice deep and precise, "this case is remarkably simple. Mr. Musk's company stole our battery design. We have the patent. We have the evidence. We have the witnesses. And by the time this trial concludes, the truth will be clear. Magnatech invented this technology, and Musk is merely the one who took it." He paused for a moment, casting a quick glance at Musk, who was busy scribbling notes. "And for a case this straightforward," Reeves smirked, "Mr. Musk's decision to represent himself, rather than hiring a professional legal team, is certainly an interesting choice." Laughter rippled through the courtroom, louder this time. The judge didn't silence it. She was curious too. Elon Musk, billionaire, entrepreneur, engineer, but not a lawyer. Did he truly believe he could win this case? Or was this about to be the first time in his life that Elon Musk faced total defeat? Musk stepped forward, pulling a slightly crumpled stack of papers from his jacket pocket. A sheet slipped from his grasp and fluttered to the floor. He bent down to pick it up, moving slowly, deliberately unhurried. A quiet chuckle emerged from the spectators, while a few reporters hastily took notes. Camera flashes flickered, capturing the rare sight of a tech billionaire seemingly flustered in a courtroom setting. Judge Thornwald folded her arms, watching his every move with keen interest. She tilted her head slightly, lips curling in an unreadable expression. "Mr. Musk, I hope you're better prepared than those papers look." Musk gave a small nod, his eyes scanning the documents swiftly, as if searching for the right place to begin. He opened his mouth to speak, then hesitated for a brief second, his expression flickering with uncertainty. "The battery design in question today uses a specialized coating that allows—" He stopped, flipping rapidly through his notes, as if trying to locate a misplaced diagram. Another paper slipped from his hands, landing near the defendant's podium. This time the laughter was louder. A few people whispered amongst themselves. Some reporters chuckled while continuing to jot things down. Reeves casually tapped a finger on the table, an air of leisure about him as if he were waiting for a disastrous performance to unfold. From the plaintiff's table, Hammond relaxed into his seat, amusement flickering in his eyes as he watched Musk stumble so early in the proceedings. "Mr. Musk," Judge Thornwald interjected, her voice calm yet laced with a hint of dry amusement. "This is not a rocket test. This is a courtroom. Here we follow legal procedures. Are you certain you're prepared to present your evidence?" Musk looked up, the overhead lights reflecting off his gray eyes. A faint smile crossed his lips, not one of embarrassment, but rather the expression of someone enjoying a game of his own making. "I believe I am, Your Honor." At last he straightened his papers, setting them neatly on the defense podium. The initial disarray had passed, and Musk remained composed, unfazed by the laughter or the skepticism surrounding him. Judge Thornwald studied him for another moment before turning back to Reeves. "Plaintiff, you may proceed." Reeves rose deliberately, exuding confidence. He adjusted his suit jacket and nodded toward his assistants, who immediately stepped forward, connecting a presentation system to the courtroom's main screen. The Magnatech Industries logo appeared, followed by a well-organized sequence of legal documents and technical diagrams. "Your Honor," Reeves said, his voice steady and commanding, his sharp gaze sweeping across the courtroom before landing on Musk. "This case is not nearly as complicated as the defendant would like to suggest. Mr. Musk's company has blatantly violated our patent, and we have ample evidence to prove it." He let the words settle in the heavy silence of the courtroom before continuing, this time with a knowing, almost playful smirk. "And for a case this clear-cut, Mr. Musk's choice to represent himself, rather than hiring a legal team, is certainly an interesting one." A quiet ripple of laughter spread across the courtroom, less restrained than before. Some reporters quickly jotted down Reeves's remark, sharp, deliberate, laced with meaning. Meanwhile, Musk remained still, his hand resting lightly on a stack of papers, unfazed by the sarcasm. He didn't react. The room fell silent as all eyes turned toward Judge Thornwald, waiting for her to announce the next step in the trial. She studied Musk once more, searching for something in his calm demeanor. No panic, no hesitation, just an unwavering gaze. Something flickered within her, just for a moment, but professionalism quickly overrode the thought. "Very well," she said, her eyes never leaving Musk. "Plaintiff, you may present your argument." Reeves stepped forward, and behind him, the large courtroom screen flickered to life. One by one, pieces of evidence appeared. His confident smile never wavered. Everything had been meticulously prepared. Whatever Musk thought he could argue today, it wouldn't make a difference. Clearing his throat, Reeves approached the podium with absolute certainty. The first images appeared on the screen behind him, a certified copy of Magnatech's patent, bearing the official seal of the Intellectual Property Office. "Your Honor, our first piece of evidence is the legal documentation affirming Magnatech's rightful ownership of the disputed battery technology." He enunciated each word precisely, his tone crisp and firm. "This patent was granted before Mr. Musk's company ever announced a similar product. This alone proves that Musk Innovations cannot possibly be the rightful owner of this technology." At his signal, another image appeared, a photograph of Magnatech's early prototype. "Furthermore, our design was completed and filed for registration before Musk Innovations made any public declarations about a comparable technology." Reeves turned toward Musk, his sharp eyes scrutinizing every detail of the billionaire's expression. But Musk remained impassive, silently observing, occasionally jotting something into his notes. His composure made Reeves hesitate, just for a fraction of a second. No flinching, no signs of distress. But it didn't matter. They had the evidence. The law was on their side. And this trial, it was nothing more than a formality, a step toward Magnatech's inevitable victory. 6 months earlier, the energy lab at Musk Innovations was bathed in a soft blue glow from the control screens, where some of the world's brightest engineers were pouring their efforts into a secret project. At the center of the room, Elon Musk and Lila Chen, his lead engineer, stood before a compact device that looked no different from an ordinary battery, but inside it held a revolutionary breakthrough. Lila swiped her fingers across the touchscreen, double-checking the data before looking up, her eyes gleaming. "It's stable," she said, unable to hide her excitement. "Efficiency is holding at 98%, 3 times higher than any existing technology." Musk nodded slightly, his gaze fixed on the nano-coating layer displayed on the screen. "If we can scale this for mass production," he said, "a single battery could power an entire house for a month. An electric car could run over 1,000 miles on one charge." He paused for a moment, then continued, his voice calm but resolute. "We just changed the entire energy industry." But the excitement didn't last long. A message flashed on Musk's phone. He glanced at it, his expression unchanged, but Lila noticed the flicker of contemplation in his eyes. "Victor Hammond is here," Musk said, setting the phone down. The room fell silent for a brief moment. Lila frowned. "Hammond? The CEO of Magnatech?" Musk only nodded. "He wants to meet and discuss a partnership opportunity." Lila crossed her arms, skepticism written all over her face. "Elon, he's not here to partner. Magnatech has a history of borrowing ideas from competitors. If we expose this technology, it won't be ours for long." Musk merely offered a faint smile, as if he had anticipated this scenario. "I know, but I want to see what card he's playing. Make sure anything critical stays hidden." 30 minutes later, inside Musk Innovations' main conference room, Victor Hammond entered, flanked by 2 assistants carrying tablets. He wore a flawless suit, his hair neatly combed, and he carried the confident smile of a man who was used to being in control. "Elon, it's a pleasure to see you," Hammond said, shaking Musk's hand with a grip just a bit too firm. "We've been hearing about the progress you and your team have been making, and I believe a collaboration between us could transform this industry in a way that benefits both parties." Musk sat down, observing Hammond with a neutral expression. "I appreciate the directness," he replied. "How exactly do you propose we collaborate?" Hammond smiled, but his eyes flickered across the room, as if mentally cataloging every detail. "I'd like to tour your research facility, see firsthand what you're developing, so we can explore how we might contribute." Musk nodded. "All right," he said, signaling to an assistant. "But some areas will be restricted. A few of our projects are still in the experimental phase." Hammond nodded in understanding, but for a brief moment, Musk caught a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. The tour began. From start to finish, Musk noticed how meticulously Hammond observed everything around him, his gaze scanning even the smallest details in the lab. But what stood out more was Hammond's assistant. The man walked slowly behind them, holding his phone as if checking messages. But every time they paused near a critical research area, his phone was subtly raised, angled just right to capture a photo without drawing attention. What they didn't know was that Musk had anticipated this. While Hammond was busy memorizing whatever he could see, Musk had his eyes on the surveillance system. On a small screen, the security camera footage played in real time. Hammond's assistant discreetly snapping pictures of circuit boards and schematics through the protective glass. As they left, Hammond shook Musk's hand once more. "I'll be in touch soon," he said, his smile unchanged. Musk simply nodded, but in his mind, the plan was already in motion. The moment the door closed, Musk didn't head back to his office. Instead, he walked straight to the security room. "Pull up all footage from today," he ordered. "I want every second." The screens replayed exactly what Musk had noticed. Hammond's assistant secretly capturing as many details as possible. But one particular moment caught Musk's attention. Hammond had paused for a second in front of the glass panel of the main research lab, staring intently inside. He didn't say anything, didn't take any notes, but Musk recognized that look. It wasn't the gaze of someone casually glancing at a screen. It was the gaze of someone trying to memorize every detail. Musk took a slow breath, tapping his fingers lightly against the control panel. "Flag all footage with suspicious activity," he instructed. The security officer nodded and began compiling a report. Musk had anticipated this. From the moment he received Magnatech's meeting request, he knew this wasn't a simple offer of collaboration. Hammond wasn't the kind of man who shared opportunities. He was the kind who took what he wanted. So when Musk agreed to the meeting, he had deliberately revealed just enough information, enough to make Hammond believe he had discovered the secret. But in reality, it was only a fragment of a much larger picture. "I set a trap, and he walked right into it." Musk sat at his desk, opened a notebook, and flipped to a page titled Magnatech, Predicted Actions. The neat handwriting mapped out a series of interconnected assumptions, each linked by arrows, forming a web of possibilities Musk had already considered. What would Hammond's next move be? There was no need to speculate for long. If Magnatech truly had its sights set on this technology, they would try to file a patent before Musk could. They would accelerate the process, using any stolen details to turn the invention into a legally protected asset before Musk had a chance to secure his own claim. Musk closed his eyes for a moment, then powered on his computer. He needed to plan his counterattack. Before Magnatech could make their move, he would strike first, with something they would never see coming. The courtroom was thick with tension as Elon Musk suddenly rose to his feet, walking slowly toward the witness stand. Everyone in the room felt the shift in his presence. No longer a man seemingly on the defensive, but someone who was completely in control. He met Judge Beatrice Thornwall's gaze and spoke in a calm, unwavering voice. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I request to summon a key witness." The courtroom buzzed with murmurs, the tension palpable. Across the room, Attorney Dominic Reeves immediately shot to his feet, irritation flashing across his face. "Objection! This witness was not on the approved list." His voice was sharp, an attempt to regain control over a situation slipping through his fingers. Judge Thornwall remained unfazed. Her cold, piercing gaze settled on Musk, studying him for a moment before she spoke. "Mr. Musk, who is this witness?" Musk didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned his eyes toward the courtroom doors. "I would like to call Priya Nair, former head of research and development at Magnatech." For a split second, Reeves hesitated, his face noticeably paling. At the plaintiff's table, Victor Hammond gripped the armrest of his chair tightly, his expression hardening with sudden wariness. The doors swung open, and Priya Nair stepped inside. She was dressed in a dark suit, her small frame exuding quiet confidence. With measured steps, she walked toward the stand, her sharp gaze sweeping across the courtroom as every eye in the room fixed on her. Reeves practically jumped out of his seat. "Objection! She has a confidentiality agreement with Magnatech. This witness has no right to testify." Musk crossed his arms, his gaze unwavering. "A confidentiality agreement cannot shield the theft of technology, counselor. According to Magnatech's employment contract, every employee has a duty to report illegal activities. And I believe Ms. Nair has a few things to report today." A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom, but Judge Thornwall remained composed. She tapped her fingers lightly on the bench, contemplating for a moment before making her decision. "Objection overruled. Ms. Nair, please take the stand." Hammond leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked onto Priya as she stepped up and took the oath. Once she was seated, Musk approached, his expression softening just slightly, though his voice remained firm. "Ms. Nair, could you tell the court why you are here today?" Priya took a deep breath, then looked directly at the judge. "I was the head of research and development at Magnatech for 8 years," she said slowly, her voice steady but resolute. "I left the company 3 months ago because I could no longer be part of their unethical practices." The air in the courtroom seemed to freeze. Judge Thornwald folded her arms, leaning back slightly in her chair. "Could you elaborate?" Priya nodded, retrieving a file and placing it on the evidence table. "These documents include internal emails, meeting transcripts, and research reports proving that the battery technology Magnatech claims to own was, in fact, stolen from Musk Innovations." Reeves shot up again. "Objection! We need time to verify these documents." But this time the judge simply raised a hand, silencing him. "Mr. Musk, can you elaborate on this evidence?" Musk stepped forward, opened the file, and pulled out a set of clearly printed emails. The first email is from Victor Hammond to Priya Nair, sent just 2 days after his visit to my lab, Musk said, his voice steady but razor-sharp. He instructed Magnatech's R&D team to replicate the nanocoating technology he had accidentally seen during his tour. Judge Thornwald flipped him through the pages, her expression growing colder. Musk continued, "The next document is an internal meeting transcript in which Mr. Hammond directed his team to fast-track a patent application before Musk Innovations could publicly announce the product." Priya spoke up, her voice now firm and unyielding. "Hammond explicitly stated in the meeting, 'We need to file the patent before Musk has a chance.' When I objected, I was removed from the project and reassigned to another department." The courtroom was suffocatingly tense. Reporters whispered to one another, hurriedly jotting down notes. Reeves took a deep breath, struggling to maintain his composure. "These documents could have been altered. We require an independent forensic analysis." Musk cut him off, still exuding calm control. "I already did that for you, counselor." He turned and gestured to a court clerk. "This file has been reviewed by a forensic data expert who confirmed that no alterations were made after the emails were originally sent." Judge Thornwald looked from Reeves to Hammond. "Mr. Reeves, do you still wish to continue your objection?" Reeves didn't respond immediately. He turned to Hammond, but the CEO remained motionless, his face rigid and unreadable. The power dynamic in the room had shifted completely. Musk was no longer on the defensive. He was in complete control. The courtroom remained thick with tension as Elon Musk flipped to the next page of the dossier, his sharp eyes scanning the documents before he looked up at Judge Beatrice Thornwald. "It's not just emails," he said, his voice calm yet heavy with intent. "I also have visual evidence from my own surveillance system." A fresh wave of murmurs rippled through the courtroom. All eyes locked onto the large screen as a video began to play. The footage was crisp and undeniable. It showed the interior of Musk Innovations' lab, capturing Victor Hammond and his assistant during their visit 6 months earlier. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath as the video reached a pivotal moment. Hammond's assistant subtly raised his phone, snapping photos of the nano-coating design sketches through the glass partition of the lab. Every detail was crystal clear. Then the footage jumped ahead, showing Hammond standing before a glass door, his eyes locked onto the schematics displayed on the screen inside. No one in the courtroom could deny what they were seeing. Attorney Dominic Reeves shot to his feet. "Objection! This video proves nothing. Looking is not the same as stealing." Judge Thornwald cast him a measured glance before turning back to Musk. "Mr. Musk, do you have anything further to add?" Musk simply smiled, placing another set of documents on the evidence table. "Absolutely, Your Honor. This is a comparative analysis between our technology and the patent design Magnatech submitted." He stepped toward the screen and pressed a button on the remote. A new image appeared, 2 technical diagrams displayed side by side. "I'd like to direct the court's attention," Musk continued, "to a very specific detail, an embedded code unique to our nano-coating layer. a marker that only my team knew about. He pointed to a tiny notation in the corner of the schematic. It was created as an internal signature, something no outsider should have known existed, and yet somehow Magnatech's design includes this exact same feature. A stunned silence swept through the courtroom. Musk turned to Reeves, but this time, the attorney no longer carried his usual air of confidence. At the plaintiff's table, Hammond's grip tightened on the armrest of his chair, his face drained of color. He knew they had been exposed. Everything Musk had done up to this point had never been coincidence. It had been a flawlessly orchestrated trap from the start. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence. On the screen before them, the two technical schematics were identical in every detail, except for one crucial fact. Magnatech's patent had been filed only after Victor Hammond's visit to the Musk Innovations Lab. Every eye in the room followed as Elon Musk's finger traced over the unique identifier embedded in his team's design. "This is not a coincidence," Musk said slowly, his voice calm but cutting like a blade slicing through Magnatech's web of deception. Judge Beatrice Thornwald set the documents down, her gaze lingering on the evidence, before shifting toward Dominic Reeves. "Mr. Reeves," she said, her voice measured, "do you have any defense against this evidence?" Reeves' fingers tightened around the edge of his desk. He took a deep breath, clearly scrambling for a rebuttal. But any argument he could muster now seemed flimsy against the stark truth laid bare before the court. "Your Honor," he said, though the confidence in his voice had waned, "we require time to verify the authenticity of these documents. Furthermore, the detail Mr. Musk pointed out is not definitive proof of technology theft." Before the judge could respond, Priya Nair spoke up, her voice stronger than ever. "There's nothing left to verify," she said, her gaze shifting from Reeves to Hammond. "I was directly involved in replicating this design." The courtroom erupted. Whispers and murmurs spread like wildfire as Priya reached into her pocket, pulling out a small USB drive and placing it on the evidence table. "This contains an internal recording from the meeting where Victor Hammond ordered us to copy Musk Innovations technology," she said firmly. In it, he states, word for word, "We need to file the patent before Musk realizes what's happening. I kept it as proof because I couldn't let this continue." All eyes turned to Hammond. Just minutes ago, he had exuded confidence, but now his face had gone pale, his jaw clenched tight. Judge Thornwald picked up the USB drive, her expression grave. "We will review this immediately," she announced, signaling for the court technician to prepare the audio playback. Hammond braced himself against the table, casting a desperate glance at Reeves. He knew this game was over. The courtroom remained engulfed in heavy silence as the recording played. Each word from Victor Hammond striking like a hammer blow, shattering every layer of deception Magnatech had tried to construct. All eyes turned to the plaintiff's table, where Hammond sat rigid, his jaw clenched as the realization sank in. The battle was over. Beside him, attorney Dominic Reeves gripped his case files tightly, but there was nothing left to object to. He knew it. Every possible escape route had been sealed shut. Judge Beatrice Thornwald set the USB drive down, leaning back in her chair, her expression a mixture of disappointment and unyielding authority. "Mr. Hammond," she said, her voice as sharp as a verdict itself, "I gave you the opportunity to present the truth, yet you chose to lie before this court. Your actions not only constitute civil violations, but also suggest corporate espionage, a charge that could lead to criminal prosecution." The air in the courtroom was taut with suspense. All eyes locked onto Hammond, but he had nothing left to say, no more defenses to offer. The judge drew a deep breath, then firmly grasped the gavel and brought it down 3 times with authority. "After reviewing all presented evidence, my ruling is as follows. First, Magnatech's patent number 108726-HUN1 is hereby nullified immediately due to fraud, and intellectual property theft. Second, Magnatech is prohibited from developing or commercializing any product related to nanocoating technology for 5 years under the Intellectual Property Protection Act of 2018. Third, Magnatech shall compensate Musk Innovations in the amount of $20 million to cover lost revenue, legal fees, and damages incurred from their intellectual property infringement. Fourth, this case will be referred to the federal prosecutor for further investigation into Mr. Hammond's corporate espionage. If sufficient evidence is found, criminal charges will be pursued. The gavel struck once more, sealing the fate of a fraudulent empire. A ripple of shock spread through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously, camera shutters flickered nonstop, capturing what would become a defining moment in tech industry history. At the plaintiff's table, Victor Hammond sat motionless, his hands gripping the armrest so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. He turned to Reeves, his eyes filled with desperation, but the attorney merely shook his head, his face a cold mask of resignation. They had lost, utterly and completely. A court official stepped forward, leaning down to speak to Hammond in a hushed but firm voice. "You'll need to remain after the hearing for further proceedings with the investigative authorities." The words landed like the final, fatal cut. Hammond slumped back in his chair, head bowed, realizing his life would never be the same again. Across the room, Elon Musk rose to his feet, calmly gathering his documents. Amidst the chaos erupting around him, he remained composed, unaffected. Priya Nair approached him, her eyes reflecting gratitude. "Thank you for standing up to them," she said softly, her voice full of sincerity. Musk gave a slight nod, the ghost of a smile flickering across his face, not one of triumph, but of knowing that justice had been served. As he stepped out of the courtroom, a swarm of reporters closed in, their questions firing off in rapid succession. "Do you think this ruling will change the tech industry? Did you anticipate this victory?" Musk raised a hand, signaling for order. His voice was steady and clear above the commotion. "I didn't come here to win or lose. I came to defend my team's work and ensure that innovation is protected, not stolen." Without another word, he strode past the crowd, showing no sign of gloating, only the quiet resolve of a man always thinking one step ahead. In a distant corner, Victor Hammond remained in his chair, his gaze hollow as he stared at the floor, while court officials and federal prosecutors moved in to begin the next phase of his downfall. The battle was over, and when the storm settled, the only one left standing was Elon Musk. The moment the gavel struck, sealing the court's final ruling, the room erupted into a hushed storm of astonishment. Reporters scrambled to jot down notes. Cameras flashed incessantly, capturing the conclusion of one of the most shocking tech lawsuits in recent history. Magnatech had not only lost its patent, but was also facing a 5-year ban, $20 million in damages, and a criminal investigation into its CEO, Victor Hammond. Amidst the chaos, Hammond sat motionless at the plaintiff's table, as if every ounce of strength had been drained from him. Throughout his career, he had always been the one ahead of the curve, the one who set the rules rather than played by them. But today, he was the one outplayed, beaten at his own game. Judge Thornwald's words still echoed in his mind, and the brutal reality crashed down on him too fast to process. His career had ended here, in this very moment. Reeves, once the confident architect of Magnatech's defense, no longer carried the sharp composure he had at the trial's start. He kept his head down, hurriedly gathering his files without meeting anyone's gaze, especially not Hammond's. He had seen CEOs fall before, but never had he witnessed someone plummet from power this swiftly. A court officer approached, his tone professional, yet carrying an unmistakable firmness. "Mr. Hammond, you will need to cooperate with the investigative team immediately after this session." On the other side of the courtroom, Elon Musk remained as composed as ever. There was no triumphant grin, no display of excitement, just a slight nod, as though everything had unfolded exactly as he had anticipated. Priya Nair, the whistleblower who had helped expose the truth, stepped closer to Musk. She looked at him, her eyes filled not just with gratitude, but with deep respect for a man who dared to stand against the industry's most ruthless giants. "You did it," she said softly, her voice laced with admiration. Musk responded with just a few simple yet weighty words. "We're just getting started." The courtroom gradually quieted, but the tension still lingered in the air. Murmurs rippled through the rows of journalists, some frantically typing out sensational headlines about the case, while others simply stared at Victor Hammond, as if waiting to see if he had any escape route left. But there was nothing left for Hammond to say. He sat motionless, his gaze hollow, like a man who had just lost everything. The court had not only stripped him of his patent, but had also put an undeniable end to his career. When the court officer approached, Hammond rose to his feet with a visible heaviness, no longer bearing the arrogant demeanor of a once powerful CEO. He did not protest, did not try to justify himself. He was simply a man whose deception had been laid bare before the world. On the other side, Elon Musk calmly buttoned his suit jacket, methodically gathering his documents. There was no urgency, no sign of uncertainty, just the quiet poise of a man who had foreseen exactly how this would unfold. As he stepped away from the defense table, he gave a small nod to Priya Nair, a silent acknowledgement of the woman who had helped bring the truth to light. "A flawless victory," she murmured. Musk responded only with a faint smile. But instead of answering, he simply kept walking. Because for Musk, this wasn't the end. This was merely the beginning of a new chapter. The courtroom was now left with only the echoing footsteps on the wooden floor. The cameras had stopped flashing, the legal documents had been closed, but the story of this trial would be told for years to come. Elon Musk didn't just win a lawsuit, he taught the world a lesson in intelligence, strategy, and justice. Never underestimate someone based on appearances. From the very beginning, people mocked Musk for representing himself, believing he was making a grave mistake. But behind the simplicity, behind his somewhat disheveled appearance, was a mind always steps ahead of everyone else. Victory doesn't come from talent alone, but from smart strategy. Had Musk charged into the battle head-on, the outcome might have been very different. Instead, he chose to appear weak, creating a scenario where his opponents grew overconfident. Then at the perfect moment, he delivered the devastating evidence that left them with no way to fight back. Justice will always prevail if we know how to defend it. The technology Musk and his team created deserved protection, and he didn't wait for justice to come to him. He stood up and claimed it himself. True innovation cannot be stolen. Magnatech could copy a blueprint, but they could never replicate Musk's vision or his relentless drive for progress. And when a mere imitator faces off against a true innovator, the battle is lost before it even begins.